Hello.
Hello, happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. I did. I got this beautiful, amazing shirt from Melissa Outwater. Thank you very much. And in case you all don't know what it says, House of Commons petition E4701 and hashtag non-confidence. That's a petition that is circulating that has, over 320,000 signatures
348
now?
last time I looked, I think.
348,000. So Canadians are listening, they're paying attention, and they want the non-confidence vote. Keep going, keep it riding, because the petition is open until December 24th. So keep sharing it out. Keep getting your friends and family to sign it. Send a message to our government saying, we're done.
Say that again.
We're done.
We're done. So we have had no hitches today. Rumble's been pretty good today. We've had some trouble with Twitter on our last show, and we had some trouble with Rumble in the past couple of weeks. So we're thinking the best place to go watch our show now is over at our website. We've actually got, not only is our show there, but there's a chat window, and everybody can chat now. So if you weren't able to chat before, now you can go to our website and you can chat from there, and you can send in comments and we can get them straight up live. So we are trying to circumvent all the platforms that might try to circumvent us. So we're just going to go straight to our website from here on in. We'll still be on Rumble and Facebook and Cloud Hub and Instagram, and of course LGM News, one of our favorite home platforms.
Love Wayne Peters.
Yeah.
You're doing good stuff, Mr. Wayne Peter. What's Up Canada is his show.
That's right. But for those of you who have just been watchers and you want to be part of the show, by all means, go to our website at TFM Report and you can chat now. Yay. And you don't have to sign up for nothing. So
chat for free, sign up for free, join the newsletter for free. Newsletter has all the stories that we don't put on the show because we only have a limited amount of time on the show.
And that is also, we kind of owe an apology. We had a house full of people this weekend. I did not get the newsletter done this weekend. So for those of you waiting hungrily, for nothing happened this week anyway. So we'll just skip to next week.
Lies. We have lots of stories in our signal that we have not talked about yet on the show. So we will have a newsletter. We just don't have it today for you. I'm so sorry.
This is true. So we are talking about, we're going to be talking about the push for the carbon passports. We're going to be getting into that, and we're going to do a whole show on that later, because it turns out this climate change and carbon thing is a scam.
You think?
Yeah. A little sneaky announcement over on Friday that snuck through just before the weekend about immigrants. We'll be talking about that. AI is cloning itself, so that can't be good. And then a few videos of inspiration and also horror. And then we'll be talking about Bill S210, which is dirty to the core. And we'll be talking about that one. And then we'll be continuing our story with our series with the New Order of the Barbarians. And just in case you didn't see it, next week you should go and watch the show from last week. I'm just rambling now.
For part one of Order of the Barbarians, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. So we'll have to preface it. We'll talk about it again later. But basically, this is a talk from the 80s, recounting a talk from the 60s, recalling pretty much everything that we're going today. And so the best part is that it shows you exactly what they've been doing. So now you can spot it, and you don't have to, wallow in confusion and wonder what's happening. This is exactly what's been happening, and it's been planned out for a long time. So the more you know, the smarter you are.
And we're helping you get smarter.
Knowledge is power. Power is truth. Truth shall set you free. So,
oh, that was good.
Just made that up right now. Okay, where do we start? You want to start on a high note?
Sure, let's start on a high note.
Just in case you're saying, hey, what can we do? These people figured it out.
There's a new government in Green Charter Township, Michigan, and they didn't waste any time changing the locks at the town hall. Residents ousted their entire town board last night, upset after they approved plans for a massive Chinese-affiliated electric vehicle battery plant.
I think they thought we were a bunch of local yokel rednecks that wouldn't do anything, and we were blessed with a crew that was very intelligent.
But it's been a long journey to this point. When we first arrived in Green Charter Township last year, residents were angry.
My family members fought communism.
and you're bringing it right here. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, and guess what China's is? They don't like us.
The township board was not answering our questions about secret deals with Chinese-affiliated company Goshen.
Mr. Jernstead, my name is Brian Enton. I'm a reporter with News Nation. With News Nation.
I don't know.
Do you have a contract with Goshen involving your land?
No comment.
Did you sell Goshen your land?
I don't know yet.
Despite the backlash from what seemed like almost everyone in the town, the board moved forward with the Chinese-affiliated project.
And this is a great example of what it looks like whenever people have a backbone and stand up against this tyrannical government. Maybe we should take a lesson from these rednecks and do it ourselves. Come on, we the people, remember? We tell them what to do. They don't tell us what to do.
Like that for free.
Isn't that for sure?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of forgotten that, haven't we? These people locked them right out of their own city hall, which is awesome.
It's pretty unheard of. 3 years ago, back November 26th, the police were locking poor Adam Skelly out of Adamson Barbecue. And now these people are locking the police and the city hall councilors out of their place. So I love it. I love how the tables are starting to turn. Congratulations.
Right.
And it just shows what the power of one can do. The power of one ends up multiplying to the power of many.
Yes.
And they're taking back their town.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that is some good news. I love that guy. Do you have a contract with Goshen? No comment. Have you sold them their property? I don't know yet. See, the power of no comment is just holding no comment the whole time.
Yes.
Every time so he kind of wavered on that pretty fast.
Just a little bit.
So this came across your feed. We've been seeing more and more of these stories, and I'm not sure if we didn't play one or if I put this on the newsletter.
I think it's in the newsletter.
But we're starting to see like a lot of them. I've seen a collage now coming up with the push for the carbon passport, and CNN tells you how that works, how that's going to work. Right?
Yeah. I saw it on Twitter. Andy Lee had posted 4 different headlines. One we had already posted about in our newsletter, and then there were 3 other ones. And she was taking some heat from people saying, "Oh, more fake headlines and stuff." So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do her a favor, and I'm going to go look, and I'm going to pull those headlines. I'm going to pull those articles, and lo and behold, not fake headlines, very much true. And the one ended up being a story that we did share in our newsletter back November 27th, I think it was. So that newsletter. So yes, the travel industry is now talking about putting the pressure on people on their carbon travel and putting limits on how many trips you can take. And they're actually talking about maybe lobbying the government so the government can help you decide how many trips you can take and what your carbon outtake is. And I'm absolutely stunned that they're blaming the carbon emissions on the tourism industry. So it looks like you're going to get hit again by government regulations because the tourist industry is lobbying for it. The airplane industry is lobbying for it. And in fact, they've even created a couple apps, which I actually went on today to test out. And sure enough, it gave us a carbon footprint. And are we going to talk about it maybe?
We are going to do a deeper dive because their numbers are really sketch and they don't add up. And if you go over here on the same website, if you go over here and look at the numbers here, they don't jive with the numbers over here. So we're actually going to break it all down because it turns out that these guys are probably not telling the truth. They are jigging the numbers to get whatever outcome they want. And we've been talking about carbon passports.
Oh my gosh, since we started.
For a year. Yeah, for a year.
Since we came on air, a year and a half, we've been talking about carbon.
And this is where it's going, your social credit score and your carbon credit score. And this is exactly what that is. So the move to digital ID will be your digital passport, and your digital passport is basically a glorified vaccine passport, and that's going to have your carbon footprint on it. Now, one thing that you should mention is the thing that you said they want to get us all down to 2 tons of carbon.
Yes, they were talking about, first off, they were saying everybody would be allowed to have 4 tons of carbon per year. But then they said, but because we're so far behind in keeping the temperature at that 1.5 degrees Celsius, that in actuality, to catch up, they're going to have to cut everybody's carbon usage from 4 tons to 2 tons. And what I discovered using one of the apps is one trip from Coburg to Scarborough is 1.74 tons of carbon, one round trip, which means I could only go to Toronto once a year.
Right. That's not taking into account the fact that you have to travel for groceries and you have to you live. Your house is included in that. So if you drive to work and you're an hour away from work, that's one day and you've used up your entire carbon credit. So this is something to be on your radar when CNN and lots of other news stories, especially Conversation. Now the Conversation looks like a blog. It looks like a glorified online news source. They are WEF run. So they're basically a propaganda arm for the UN, World Economic Forum, and all those guys. So if Conversation's pushing that out, then you know that that this is going to be a thing next year.
This is how they're going to lock you into the 15-minute cities, or convince people that the 15-minute city is where they should be, because now they're not using carbon or their carbon allottage to go to work. So that's how they're going to do it. We were at the UN SDG summit in September. They said that this is how they were going to do it. They were going to start lobbying the government for regulations. They were going to start pushing that, airplane is the most expensive carbon travel you can do. And they even had some environmental stuff on there with graphs that showed that of the carbon footprint, I believe it was transportation was 29% of your carbon footprint that you used. Yeah. And then when you went into the transportation, they had it broken down further. So we will do a much deeper dive on that at a later show. And then we'll show you the different apps that they are saying you can use so you can keep on track. Because, right now it's just the banks that are tracking you, and the government's using the bank's information to also track you. But you don't know right now what it is they're tracking and how much it is you're using, but you are going to be, I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised by how they're adding up your carbon.
You'll be a little shocked for sure.
Yeah.
And yes, Louise, I mean, it's really just stay at home, never leave, eat bugs that you find crawling along your windowsill. And maybe if you're lucky, you can give yourself the luxury of hand cranking up your electric generator for a little bit so you can sort of
stay warm.
Watch your phone for 5 minutes. So, senior Canuck travel agents are going to literally put themselves out of business, thinking that they're doing something good and being green. Yeah, I wonder if sabotaging an elite's jet offsets your carbon footprint. Would that count? Would you get back a bunch of carbon footprint if you sabotage their jet for a while? Probably not. In fact, you might even lose or be penalized for sabotaging their jet, because the way they've got the carbon credit system set up is that they'll be able to buy your carbon footprint that you didn't use because you couldn't afford to go traveling. So good times. Good times. Fun times coming. So this got snuck in just before the weekend, Friday afternoon. Canada builds on pledges and partnerships with the Global Refugee Forum, building on Canada's recent work to welcome over 40,000 vulnerable Afghans, which have been achieved and exceeded. The minister announced $21 million for the International Organization for Migration to support vulnerable Afghan populations in Central Asia and Pakistan who are fleeing Afghanistan. This funding will help these neighboring countries become better equipped to support them and respond to their needs. So not only are we paying for immigrants now to come to Canada and paying for their hotels and their food to the tune of $793 million last year, we're now paying for them and putting them up in hotels in other countries as well. So we're paying for them around the globe. And the IOM, the Organization for Migration, International Organization for Migration, is of course a UN company, and it's WEF aligned and yada, yada, yada. And you know what? The funny thing is when we were, again, at the UN SDG Summit in September, they talked about how the Western civilizations can help pay for the Southern civilizations or third world countries, help them meet their SDG goals. Well, this is one way that Canada can help, the Afghanis meet their SDG goals by transferring their civilization elsewhere and paying for it.
Isn't that kind of us? We are now following the UN SDG goal strategy. So congratulations, Canada. Aren't you all happy?
We're helping.
More of your tax dollars helping the less fortunate leave our country, leave their country, and not bring any money back into our country.
That's right. But who knows? You might not have to do anything yourself because it turns out researchers have built AI that can replicate and alter itself. And I'm pretty sure that's an opening line from the original Terminator script, says the headline. So have you ever seen Multiplicity? The 1996 Michael Keaton classic is eventually the tale of an average guy who lets a local scientist clone him. He eventually clones himself multiple times until he has a small army of geniuses, misanthropes, and even idiots that all just look like him. Now that we have AI that at a smaller scale can replicate itself, but not as a perfect duplicate, but as a slightly Multiplicity style clone that is recognizable as the original, but also different and obsessed with, say, one aspect of your sneakers or shirt or your refrigerator or your lighting setup or the shows. So basically it replicates itself. One thing monitors it micromanages everything and then reports back to the head AI as one hive mind.
You know, I watched that movie, and when we were putting the show together, I didn't remember, but as you started reading, I'm like, oh yes, there was like, he had 50 clones of himself, but they all literally were just little pieces of himself. So some were really, really dumb. Some were really, really focused on just one thing. Like when you say one track mind, it really was a one track mind. And it's much like viruses, right? When viruses duplicate themselves, they actually get weaker and weaker and weaker. And that was sort of the premise of Multiplicity. The clones got weaker and weaker the more they divided out. And according to this article, it looks like AI will be doing the same thing, weaker and weaker and weaker. It can only focus on one or two aspects of the original machine. And I'm going to call it a machine because it's not a person or a thing. It's a machine. Right?
Yeah, it just replicates itself to micromanage and hive mind different aspects. So here we go. We'll answer this question again.
Okay, Louise.
Yeah, had you been here on time, Louise?
This is a gift from Melissa Outwater, who actually put the petition together that everyone is signing. It's now got over 348,000 signatures.
Yeah.
It's got over 348,000 signatures. That is counting or asking for the non-confidence vote. Hashtag non-confidence. It's the House of Commons petition E4701. If you haven't signed it yet, please do. I know it's only been out for about 20 days, something like that. It does end on December 24th. It's out for 30 days. So if you haven't signed it, get your signature on there. All of us are unhappy with the Liberal government. We're all unhappy with how our government is taking advantage of us. We're all unhappy with all of the immigration policies that are coming in, with the excess spending without any sort of transparency. We are unhappy with all of the five, what are they? I'm drawing a blank. My brain is going.
Five Chinese brothers?
Not five Chinese brothers.
Five Golden Rings?
the interference, the outside interference, of course. But no, the SNC Lavalin, what do you call that?
No, you're on your own. I don't know. You had no plan going into this.
God. I did have a plan. I had the word and then it went because I'm getting old.
All
I'm
right.
49. As my son said, Mom, you're way over the hill now. You're 50 next year. I'm like, thank you. Love you, Caleb. But scandals. That's the word I was looking for. Scandals. With the 5 different scandals, and the embarrassment on the world stage. We're not getting invited to everything anymore because Trudeau just keeps embarrassing himself and us in the process.
Right.
So if you haven't signed the House of Commons petition E4701, please sign it. It is calling for the non-confidence vote. And it closes December 24th. So you still have some time to get in there and get your signature on it if you haven't signed it. And please share it around. You have the option to share it to everybody in your sphere of influence.
Right. Yes, you are most welcome. So yeah, get out there and vote like you're saying. But one day you might not have to do that. You might have to get up and be burdened with voting. Thankfully, Klaus Schwab has a solution in place for us.
The UN always has a solution, and the WEF. Thank gosh.
Thank goodness for them. I don't have to think for myself.
Technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
I don't know that I want somebody stealing my vote or just assuming they know my vote. And that's why we always say be spontaneous and vote with your cash, because as long as you're voting with your cash, they don't know what your behavioral outcome will be and they can't predict it.
I'm not putting that up, Louise.
And I love that, Louise.
No. Yes. You own nothing. But the fact that he even just says that out loud means he's gotten very cocky. And the guy sitting next to him, how cockiness, saying that stuff publicly, like we're just going to say out loud that there's no need to vote anymore. We've got it all figured out.
I don't know how, as you said, I don't know how the guy sitting beside him doesn't punch him right in the mouth. You're going to steal my voice? You're going to steal my thoughts because you think you know my thoughts?
Unless he's on board.
I'll tell you right now, Chris doesn't know my thoughts, and he's around me almost 24/7, and he doesn't know my thoughts. Even when he thinks he does, I take great pleasure in telling him he's wrong.
I have a pretty good idea when you're slamming plates around. I get it. Yeah. I don't really want to know exactly what you're thinking at that point. The Palestine-Israel thing, we just are loath to get into that. Not because we don't want to pick sides, but because the whole thing is a scam. It's a distraction, and it's just a manipulation. It's another thing to create a divide and more distraction. And so there was the Palestinian thing in the mall where they were both protesting and making kids cry at the Santa thing. And then there was the guy who actually threatened the cops straight up.
Yes.
And the video that's been floating around is there was that little old guy, like 90 years old. He honked his horn and he was violently arrested. And this guy straight up threatens a cop and to kill him and gets away with it. So that's one side of it, which is just getting ridiculous. And then this comes up and we're like, we were going to play this, but Jody's like, it's a good reminder of how much our media is manipulated, and it's fair. The liberals got caught doing this not too long ago, and they're still doing it, but they're hiding what they can.
Sent out an entire campaign to content creators and influencers to support Israel.
$5,000 is what I was just offered to pledge my support to Israel. And I think this is absolutely disgusting. You cannot buy my support of a genocide.
Several social media influencers have spoken out after being offered financial and social incentives by pro-Israeli lobbies to announce their support for Israel and to adjust their narrative in Israel's favor amidst Tel Aviv's war on Palestine's Gaza. An email sent by a global collective asked users to share content from its library with the hashtags #StandWithIsrael and Hamas is ISIS, promising to share the influencers' posts for increased viewership. The collective sought to legitimize their offer by referencing celebrities such as Kim Kardashian, Madonna, and Jerry Seinfeld. Meanwhile, other groups offered money to content creators to stir up support for Israel.
Israeli marketing groups are paying my followers to switch sides. Pretty much they're telling my followers that if they go live with them, they are going to compensate them $1,000 US. And they say that they might even give them up to $2,000 just to go live with them.
Some pro-Palestinian influencers also claim that pro-Israeli brands have threatened to revoke their sponsorships for publicly supporting Palestinians.
I received an essay basically saying that they're not willing to work with me anymore because I've publicly said that I support Palestine. I'll receive another message where they said if I take the post down and publicly announce that I do not support, that they will pay me basically double the amount that we agreed on, and they would repost my video onto their feed, which in what actual right mind do you think that you can buy my morals?
And that's not all. The This Israeli page has been lifting photos from pro-Palestinian creators and re-editing them to fabricate increased support for Israel.
Apparently, I stand with Israel? And it's not just me. The real Yaz also has apparently been supporting Israel without her knowledge.
Israeli groups have long been accused of manipulating information and controlling the narrative through digital and PR campaigns in an attempt to whitewash their war crimes. But this time, their campaign has backfired.
If you wanted proof on how Israel is using social media, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Everyone does that. Every government does it, and I'm sure Hamas has been doing it. The US got caught doing it. Canada's been doing it. The UK's been doing it. Like they all do it. So,
well, we know that's part of the UN strategy as well. They know that people have FOMO and they want to keep up with the Joneses or the Madonnas or the, I don't know, Tracy Morgans of the world, who knows? So if they can get these celebrities to say, hey, support this, don't support that, or I stand with, they've got someone else that will influence thousands of people on their behalf for a little bit of money, and it furthers their narrative.
See, I agree with you, Hashem. There's so many things I don't know on both sides, and I don't claim to be an expert on, and this has been a complex thing for a very long time, since way before my grandparents were born. And I don't know. And then there's a pressure to, when you don't take a side, there's a pressure from people calling you out to take a side. It's like ridiculous. This is just a distraction, and it's not our, for to see this crop up the way it is just, come on, let's just call it for what it is. The whole thing's a freaking psyop.
The only side you can take is those of those innocent children that are caught in the middle of one person funding both sides. So, divide and conquer, right? Their narrative gets a little bit further ahead, and we know they're way behind. So they need to start accelerating the pace. So what are they going to do? They're going to start dividing everywhere they can. They've got oodles and oodles and oodles of money. Their great grandkids are going to live amazing lives if nothing changes, because there's so much money that they can afford to fund both sides of a conflict. They can afford to create two sides of a conflict and then fund both sides to exterminate each other. For them, it's fun and games. It's the game of Risk.
Yeah, it's just more control, more money for them. And yeah, I mean, let's keep our eye on the prize and who's the real enemy here. And that's the people funding these wars.
Smarter. We got to buck up and start saying, no, I'm not going to fight that stranger across the road because I don't know the stranger and he's done nothing to me to hurt me and my babies. So I'm not fighting them. And everybody just needs to put their guns down and start saying no. You say no, it's done. It's done.
Yes. So, and then it's all over. So even the global elites will know that, just peace is better. Wait a minute. We're getting wind. I think if I go way back here, Louise brought it up just a little while. Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg. He just built a $28 million bunker. He's not alone.
He's not alone.
Well, what makes me a prepper is when the elites who I know personally are building bunkers to keep them off the grid for 10 years. And this started 2 years ago.
Whoa. 10 years?
Yep. 10 years, my friend.
Like a 10-year food supply?
Yep. Between 3 and 10 years. The lowest one I've seen is a 3-year prep, off the grid, off the range, completely from remote mountains to remote islands. And these are big money people that have information at the top level. And I could talk to you about it offline, Mike, but they're prepping. And
well, now I have to talk to you about this offline, but what can you say publicly, if anything, about what are the broad concerns that why would a wealthy person bother to stockpile a decade of food?
Because for whatever reason, whatever's being planned, infrastructure-wise, I think that the system's going to go down. I just do. Because I would not, if I'm an elite and I have all the resources in the world to go buy whatever, I got private jets, everything else, why would I prep at that level? What is it I always say? What is it that I don't know? It's
Right.
no different than I was January 5th and 6th. I was down at the Capitol, right?
What do they know that we don't know? And we always say, follow the money. What are the elites doing? That will give you your cue of what you need to do.
You need to find out where their bunkers are. That's what you need to do.
That too.
Yeah.
But even Warren Buffett, a bunch of the elites, Warren Buffett being the big one that I read about, and I can't remember the other names, but they're starting to sell off all their stock.
Yeah,
They're
28
liquidating.
billion. He just offloaded 28 billion, which has caused quite the ripple effect.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe they're heading off beyond the ice wall. Maybe that's where they're
Maybe.
going.
But you know, that movie, Leave the World Behind, and not that I want to keep talking about it,
Yeah.
but they like to tell us what they're going to do before they do it. And that way, when it happens, it's we've seen this before. It's a movie. And when people talk about it, people are like, that's just a movie. That's just a conspiracy theory. That could never happen. But if you noticed in that movie, there was basically 3 levels of preparedness. There was the not prepared at all. There was this, I know something's going on. I know something's going to happen. So I'm ready to accept that something's going to happen, but I'm not necessarily ready. But I'm going to make sure instead of going into the city, I'm going to go to the country. And then you had the guy, actually, there was 4 levels of preparedness, sorry. And then you had the guy who everybody said it was crazy and the conspiracy theorists in town. And he was mostly ready. And then you had the neighbors that didn't talk to anybody, that kept their bunker construction under wraps, didn't tell anybody, didn't show anybody that they were shopping. They probably shopped out of town so nobody could see what was happening. And you go in their bunker, and it is completely ready to go to live in with movies and entertainment and underground systems to work the lights and the food and the hydroponics and the gardens and all of that. So there are 4 levels of preparedness. You need to start asking yourself, what level of preparedness am I? And you can check out the show that we did. Was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we did a prepper show
with Ryan, who went through different levels of prep. We should all, at the end of the day, be prepared for power outages. We are in Canada. It is wintertime. We tend to have at least 1 or 2 horrible winter storms that take our lines down. So at the very, very least, be prepared for a power outage that could last a couple weeks.
Yeah. So we kind of struggle with this stuff because we don't want to go too dark or negative or do fear porn or freak people out. But at the same time, you know, we've been pretty ahead of the curve on the stuff that's been coming. And there comes a time when we've got to say, just go and get some basic supplies. You know, if nothing else, and it doesn't cost you a fortune, go to archive.org and start searching out manuals on how to do things and download them and print them off. And then, you know, you can learn how to can, or you can learn how to, you know, fish for things with, I don't know, you know, pushing, you know, braiding your hair and fishing for crap. I'm sure it's a thing. Yeah. They've got survivalist books. They got survivalist books. They've got, you know, how to defend yourself manuals. They've got all sorts of manuals. Just go download a whole bunch of them. It doesn't cost you anything but ink, which is probably more expensive than gold at this point. And, and you know, if nothing else, just prepare. So at least if things go out, you're going to know how to pick a lock. You're going to know how to jumpstart a car. Or hotwire car. I'm not saying you should do any of those things, but you know, there's manuals on safe cracking. So,
what I want to know is how to siphon gasoline without like having gurk in your mouth. Because if cars break down on the road or stop, or you know, the electrical pulses shut your engines and everything off, I want to be able to get the gas out of those cars to go in a generator that I may or may not have with me, right? From the house's lock that I picked to get the generator.
Now, if you're asking me, how would I do it?
Yeah.
I'd get you to do it. That's how I keep it.
That's why I'm saying I need a manual.
I got nothing for you. I have no help here for you. Yeah. So yeah, there's there you go. Fill jars with
mason jars with water.
Right. And you can store eggs forever if you just
if you dirty them up or was it oil or put something
yeah,
on the outside
oil
of them?
or grease or something on the outside
Yeah.
so you cover the pores and the eggs will stay forever. So there's lots of little tricks. And so you can look for older manuals and that's a good start.
Yeah.
That doesn't cost you a fortune. And there's so much information on archive.org that you'll get sidetracked and be entertained anyway. So
Yeah. And if you have a pool in the backyard, you're even better off than everybody else without a pool, because that's a lot of water. Get yourself a life straw or a filtering system, and you can just take the water out of there and filter it, and voila,
Yeah,
you are
life
good to go
straws.
for a long time.
Life straws, it's like $40 for 4, and they do like 200 liters or something, or more than that.
More than that. We just looked at the ones we have, and I believe it was like 10,000 gallons.
Yep.
Something like that.
So
They last
endless
like 5
water.
years.
Endless water filtered for you. Get a Berkey Light.
Berkey Light.
Yeah, stuff like that. Okay, where are we now? Oh, we're into overpopulation. So that is
all the people in the world, 9 billion inhabitants, stood next to each other, 4 people per 1 square meter. The entire human population would fit on an area the size of the Istrian Peninsula. If each person in the world were provided with a space of about 1,000 square meters to grow food for themselves, the entire human population would fit on an area equivalent to the size of Brazil. If each 4-member family were provided with a space of about 700 square meters to grow food for themselves, the entire human population would fit on an area equivalent to Iran. In 2019, it was estimated that there were approximately 7.7 billion people in the world. Almost all the necessary vegetable quantities for a 4-member family can be produced on about 200 square meters of garden space. It is known that arable land currently covers an area of about 31 million square kilometer. On this land, the vegetable quantities needed to feed 155 billion people, or over 38 billion 4-member families, could be grown. There are not too many people. There is more than enough space for everyone, except for greed.
Except for greed.
Just talking to you, Bill Gates. So there you go. So it's dispelling this we don't have a population problem. Let's just start with that. We have a solutions problem. And the reason we have a solutions problem is because we have a whole bunch of people that are hiding all of the information from everyone else. They're not including everyone in the solutions because they think they're better and smarter than everyone else. And if they would just open it up, then everybody could come up with solutions. But here's the thing, there are solutions. So it's really not about solutions. It's really not about overpopulation. It's about remaking the world in your image, and that image mocks God. And that's what these people are doing, because they want total control, and they want to just bump off a bunch of people and sit in control over whoever's left. And they want to force evolution and remake man in their image. And again, it has nothing to do, because there's people who've come up with so many different solutions on how to grow better food and all that stuff.
How to run your automobiles off of water, right?
Yeah.
And every time someone comes up with a great solution, they magically go missing, and so does the solution get buried. It's pretty phenomenal how often that happens.
Crazy. So we're into that now, and this is your time to shine. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Time to shine.
Yeah,
well,
this is about you.
Actually, there's one other thing I want to just quickly say. I just want to say congratulations to the Purelator employees who actually had a union that stood up for them. And I received this letter from the Teamsters local union number 31. The union stood up for the Purelator employees against the COVID-19 policy. They called it into question, and the company was found by obviously arbitration and the tribunal that looks after union and employer issues. And they finally got a ruling in their favor saying that the COVID-19 policy was unjustly put into place. It does not match their contracts that they dealt with. Contract law, everybody, that's how you needed to fight. And that's exactly how they fought. And they got the ruling December 15th. So that was a couple of days ago. So congratulations to the Purelator employees who stuck together, united, non-compliance, and they won. And they won based on contract law. Hint, hint, hint. Something I was helping a lot of people with at the beginning. And those people who went contract law got to keep their jobs. So congratulations to you guys.
Now you have no excuse to get our stuff to us on time.
Correct. Now, there was something else that happened over the weekend or last week that I guess it was last week that nobody was really paying attention to because we've got the Palestine-Israel conflict and all these crazy protests and threats on the police and blah, 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 which has everybody thoroughly entertained.
Right. Just a quick side note.
Okay.
For those of you, I know there's a lot of people commenting on Rumble right now. We can't take those comments and put them live, but if you go over to our website at TFM Report and want to join the chat there, we can add those comments to the stream if you want to be a little more interactive.
Well, Senior Crank says, get an antique car without electronic ignition.
Absolutely.
Very, very true. Great. But the government is trying to outlaw antique cars or cars that are older than a certain age because they have no computer or electronic compartments in them. Oh, he said, you're right, Chris. That's why you're saying that, because you want everybody to see that you were right on something. Huh.
What? Okay, I like this person.
I don't know what it was, though, because I didn't see when his comment come up.
Yeah.
Moving on. Sorry. So while everybody was distracted with Palestine and Israel and the protests and the threats on the police and this, that, and the next thing, Bill S-210, we have mentioned it before on our show. It was brought into effect. When did it come in? It was introduced November 24th, 2021 by Julie Meville Deschamps, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. And she's a senator from Quebec. So she's not an MP. She was an appointed senator. And so she introduced this in 2021. And as of, what did I say? December 13th, 2023, it is now at third reading. So it passed the Senate. So it went through 1, 2, 3 readings at the Senate. And now it's in the House of Commons. And it has passed 1 and 2. So it is at level 3 now. If it passes number 3, it just needs royal assent and it becomes law. And I will tell you this. On the surface, it sounds fantastic. Bill S10 is, do you want to put up the slide for everybody? So
Sure.
Thank you, babe. So it's an act to restrict young persons' online access to sexually explicit material. Sounds fabulous. We don't want our children being exposed to sexually explicit material before they are emotionally, physically, mentally ready.
Yeah.
And realistically, this is kind of a parent's job to do. It's not really the government's job to do, right?
But wait a minute. When have they ever been on our side? Hold on. What's the hook?
Never. And the government likes to butt into family issues. In fact, the government, if you've been following legislation and bills that are being introduced, likes to more and more tell parents you don't have the right to parent your children because we, the government, know how to do it best. And in fact, we're going to start kicking and keeping things from you and kicking you out of the schools. That's sort of what's happening. But this bill sounds great on the surface, and then you got to dig a little deeper. Like most headlines, you got to dig a little deeper. Don't just stop at the headline. So we have here, it says, whereas a significant proportion of the sexually explicit material accessed online is made available on the internet for commercial purposes, in particular through pornographic websites, and is not protected by an effective age verification method. So this is the preamble. That I've just picked out a few things from the preamble to read. Sexually explicit material by young persons is associated with a range of serious harms, including the development of pornography addiction, the reinforcement of gender stereotypes. Oh, only 2 genders. No, there's not, according to the government. And the development of attitudes favorable to harassment and violence, including sexual harassment and sexual violence, particularly against women. So they're saying young people under the age of 18 that are exposed to this have these issues, and yet they're exposing them to them in the schools at primary grades. That's what SOGI is all about. So if the government exposes, it's okay. But if you're exposing on the internet for money, commercial purposes, then you're the bad guy and the government's the good guy. It also states that, sexually explicit material online for young persons are an important public health and public safety concern. You're right. It is a public health and public safety concern. I believe that's what the 1 million March for Kids was about, that the government was standing against. I believe all the parents that have been out in droves this last year demonstrating against the SOGI initiatives in the school, it all has to do with public health and public safety of their children. And here, this senator has put it in the bill. However, they deem that the government knows what's safe, not the parents. And it really focuses on the commercial purposes, has a responsibility to ensure that it is not accessed by young persons. So again, it's the business's responsibility to make sure that children aren't watching sexually explicit stuff, not the parents, again, taking away the parental rights to engage their children. And when I looked at the purpose of the bill, so the purpose reads in Section 4, the purpose of this act is to protect public health and public safety, and in particular, to protect the mental health of young persons by restricting their access to sexually explicit material, and B, to protect Canadians, in particular, young persons and women, from the harmful effects of the exposure. And C, deter organizations that make sexually explicit material available on the internet for commercial purposes from allowing young persons to access their material. So everything in this bill is, if you're making money from showing sexually explicit material, porn, nude bodies, what have you, then they don't want you doing that, and you need to figure out a way to validate people's ages. And just so I went one thing further, because they keep mentioning sexually explicit material throughout this bill. And when you look at the definitions, it says means sexually explicit material as defined for the purposes of subsection 171, subsection 171, subsection 11 of the Criminal Code. So I actually dug out the Criminal Code because I was curious, well, what does that mean? Why can't we define sexually explicit material? And when you read Criminal Code section 171, it says every person commits an offense who transmits, makes available, distributes, or sells sexually explicit material. To a person who is or who the accused believes is under the age of 18, a person who is or who the accused believes is under the age of 16, and who the person is or who the person believes is under the age of 14. And then under those, it lists other subsections under the Criminal Code that these actually refer to. And when you go and read those subsections, it actually talks about sexually explicit material of children. So it's not really, when you dive, it's not really talking about sexually explicit material or porn for adults. It's talking about pornography that involves children. That's where this is going to. So if you're profiting off of porn that involves children under the age of 18, 16, or 14, that's the crime. That's the crime. And if you have that kind of a website, then any organization, this is the offense, section 5, any organization that for commercial purposes makes available sexually explicit material on the internet to a young person is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction and is liable for a first offense to a fine of not more than $25,000 or $250,000, and for a second subsequent offense to a fine of not more than $500,000. So that sounds horrible. But wait, there's more.
But wait.
Section 6 says defense age verification. Legitimate purpose, number 2. So section 6, subsection 2 says no organization shall be convicted of an offense under section 5, which we just read, if the act that is alleged to constitute the offense has a legitimate purpose related to science, medicine, education, or the arts.
Unbelievable.
So as long as you're not selling the sexually explicit material, which involves children, it's okay.
Well, but also all these people are saying, hey, they're showing kids porn in schools.
So it's okay.
So they just enshrined it in a law that part's okay. But if you're selling porn, so basically there is no consequence. There really is no rule there. It looks good on the surface, but there's no rule there for anywhere it matters. And meanwhile, you have to set up some sort of system for digital ID. So this is just, it's pulling heartstrings to push in digital ID. At the end of the day, there's no consequences for anyone.
Exactly. But the sexually explicit material that it references in subsections with regards to the criminal code is all sexually explicit material involving minors.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't refer to sexually explicit material under the definition of adults, even though it talks about violence against women, and we need to protect women from this harmful material, and we need to protect children. But the definition actually says just sexual material that involves children is what we need to protect from being commercially sold. But it's okay if it's education, or if it's art, or if it's science, or it's medicine. So guess what? As long as you're not making money off of it, it's educational purposes. No charges are filed against you. You are fine. It's perfectly legal to put it on the internet. It's perfectly legal. You don't have to put it on the black web anymore, because this bill, S210, says you don't have to.
Right. So you can go back to showing kids porn in school as long as it's educational, and you can still do porn as long as it's only got adults and maybe animals.
No, it doesn't say adults. Sexually explicit material involving children.
Yeah, it defined that. And so as long as you're keeping it to adults and you're commercial, then again, you're not doing anything wrong. So it's really just a play for digital ID at the end of the day. So anybody who votes for this bill is, I don't
If you vote for this bill and you approve this bill and you're sitting, because right now it was a senator that introduced it. So it's already passed the Senate. It passed back in April 2023, the Senate. So it's sitting at the House of Commons right now, and it's passed reading 1 and reading 2. So it's currently in reading 3. If it passes the House of Commons, all it needs is the royal assent stamp, and it becomes law, which means sexually explicit material involving minors will be okay to be on the web as long as you're not making money off of it. And the regulations haven't been made for it yet to verify ID. So it's okay to be on the web if you're making money from it, only if you have a technological way to verify the person who's buying its ID. And if you can't verify the person's ID, and they have yet to describe what's the acceptable way of providing or verifying ID, but if as long as you're not making money from it, you're not using it for commercial purposes, you can put pedophilia on the internet, and it's perfectly legal as per Bill S210. You all need to be paying attention. Stop watching this Israel-Palestine conflict. It's just a giant ass distraction to get this through and make pedophilia on the website or on the internet perfectly legal to have. Again, it's another step of stripping innocent children from their innocence and removing parental obligations when it comes to their children. Please pay attention. Please write to the House of Commons, which is your MPs. Write to every single one of them and tell them they've got to vote no. The Liberals already said no in the Senate. They voted them down. 133 Liberals voted no, and it still went forward because the Liberals are working on their own version of the same legislation. So they want their version approved, not this senator's. She's an independent senator. And by the way, when I started doing some research on that independent senator, she is part of UNESCO, and UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. She sits on the board of the UN. So this is another UN agenda, part of their SDG goals, to eliminate parental control over their children and to normalize pedophilia. So that's what this bill's about. And the Liberals are pissed that a senator beat them to a punch.
Okay. Well, yeah, you should don't write your MPs. They're going to be home for Christmas, so go
Show up
visit
at their
them.
doors, knock.
Yeah.
Merry
so
Christmas.
we
Let me tell you a story.
We're very, very over. We'll get through some of this, but not all of it because this is very long. It's unless you want to stick with us for another 20 minutes, I think 25 minutes to half an hour.
So part 2 of Order of the Barbarians.
Yeah, and we just find this super important because it goes over stuff. It's stuff we all know is happening, but how much do we know that it is a very planned, organized thing? Everything that we know. One of the things to listen for when you're listening to this, and again, this was I think Dr. Oh, hey, look, I got it right here. Dr. Dunnigan, Lawrence Dunnigan, gave this, recorded these tapes in 1988, and he was referencing a speech from 1968 by Dr. Richard Day, who helped co-found Planned Parenthood. He was a globalist. He was in the Insider, and the idea behind this was that he had friends that he considered close enough that he wanted to warn them. And he said at that point he was allowed to tell them because everything's been in place and there's nothing that we can do to stop them at this point. So this is inside information from the globalists saying these are the things we're going to be doing over the next decade, turn of the century kind of stuff. And it's amazing to see how much has been put in place and how we have gone with it. And it's today, everything is normal. We don't question any of it. But when he's talking about these things, remember that they hadn't happened yet. And things like euthanasia and abortion, this is long before Roe versus Wade. So it was shocking to even think back then that this stuff would be happening. And when he's saying that these things will come to fruition, remember when he's talking about them, they weren't a thing. They weren't normal in life. So they weren't thinking of it in the way that we think of it. So so we'll get into it and we'll cut now and again and kind of interject a little bit here and there.
No surprise then that the next item was abortion. And this, now back in 1969, 4 years before Roe v. Wade, he said abortion will no longer be a crime. Abortion would be accepted as normal and would be paid for by taxes for people who could not pay for their own abortions. If school sex programs would lead to more pregnancies in children, that was really seen as no problem. Parents who think they are opposed to abortion on moral or religious grounds will change their minds when it is their own child who is pregnant. So this will help overcome opposition to abortion. Before long, only a few diehards will still refuse to see abortion as acceptable, and they won't matter anymore.
This has happened.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happened. Not a little bit different. He's talking from the United States perspective, so there's a couple things that'll be different. But we pay for abortions.
We do pay for abortions.
Not only that, we've got a PM that champions it and defunds organizations, summer camps that refuse to acknowledge abortion. So not only that, they're pushing it on people in order to get funding.
Yeah. I remember when that first came into play, I was in charge of a child's youth theater camp. And when we were applying for the grants, that was one of the questions on the thing. Do you support pro-choice initiatives? I was like, I've never had to answer this question before.
Nor should you have had to.
Exactly.
Right. So the idea of it was just shocking and abhorrent to them back then. But don't forget, the guy giving the talk was a co-founder of Planned Parenthood, who was a globalist who wants to depopulate. So you can kind of figure out the agenda from there.
Yeah.
Homosexuality also was to be encouraged. People will be given permission to be homosexuals. That's the way it was stated. They won't have to hide it. And elderly people will be encouraged to continue to have active sex lives into their very old ages as long as they can. Everyone will be given permission to have sex, to enjoy however they want. Anything goes. This is the way it was put. And I remember thinking how arrogant for this individual or whoever he represents to feel that they can give or withhold permission for people to do things. But that was the terminology that was used.
So, yeah, again, back in the day when
the 80s.
Yeah, none of us ever talked. And then the 80s came along. I just saw a picture from that. The 80s came along, and he'll be talking about AIDS, and maybe I should have kept it for then. But I just saw a protest from the 80s with the gay community.
Milk was the big, I think the gentleman's last name was Milk, but there's a movie with Sean Penn stars as the guy. Is that the movie you're talking about?
No,
well,
not
there
at
you
all.
go.
And the protest was talking about how, I don't know the name of the drug, but Fauci was withholding the drug that could save lives. And they were holding up signs, Dr. Fauci, you're killing us. And this was in the 80s.
Yeah, AZT was the drug that they gave them, but that ended up actually killing a lot of people.
Right.
AZT.
Well, I just think that Fauci's been, he's been behind a lot of stuff for a very long time.
Super active.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 80s, they were marching for gay rights and whatnot. So again, this speech was done in the 60s, and here we are in the 80s, and that became the thing,
Yeah.
right?
He talks about that in a second, though.
Families would be limited in size. We already alluded to not being allowed more than 2 children. Divorce would be made easier and more prevalent. Most people who marry will marry more than once. More people will not marry. Unmarried people would stay in hotels and even live together. That would be very common. Nobody would even ask questions about it. It would be widely accepted as no different from married people being together.
So the crazy to think that people got married, they stayed married, they died together, and that's it. And nowadays it's, we don't even think twice about living together and people who are living together. And
Oh, is this your first, second, third, or fourth marriage?
yeah, that's right.
Right.
Lucky number 8.
But what's
Yeah.
interesting is that he says that was part of the plan.
Yes.
To break up the nuclear family.
Yes.
And it sounds ridiculous when you hear somebody say, oh, our plan is going to put an end to marriages. It's going to put an end to traditional family. You go, oh, please. People choose their family. They choose their love mate and they stay married. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. So to think that this was a plan, so you start to wonder when you're in those situations and those relationships, is it really your plan to separate? Or was it, are you just the ant in their bigger plan, and due to outside influences is why you're leaving?
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so much environmentally, and they'll talk a little bit about that too. And that's something we have to do a show on, because we're manipulated in ways that we don't even realize. We talk a lot about propaganda, but we'll get into that in a minute as well.
Mass psychosis.
More women will work outside the home. More men will be transferred to other cities in their jobs. More men would travel and work. Therefore, it would be harder for families to stay together. This would tend to make the marriage relationship less stable, and therefore tend to make people less willing to have babies.
Interesting, because that's exactly what happened. People started commuting further and further away to work. So the family was now separated for a much longer period of time.
Right. And back then it was like, the guy went to work and the woman stayed home and cleaned and looked after the kids, which was, I'm an advocate for. They need a stable, stable parent around and all that stuff. But if you suggest now that the woman should stay home and clean the house and cook the dinners and look after the kids, holy cow, that's a crap storm coming your way. So not only
a crap storm.
Yeah, not only is it accepted, but you get in trouble for trying to suggest that should have been the normal way. That is the foundation for a nuclear family. But you can't even talk about that anymore.
No.
Crazy how far we've come.
But you know what? For me, I think it doesn't matter which parent stays home, or which parent goes to work, or maybe both parents go to work when the child is at school. But it'd be nice if at least one parent was home when the child walked through that door from school.
Right.
Just, because then there's so much more monitoring or parental involvement and parental influence, and less TV, iPad, social media influence on that child, video game influence on that child. If the parents are home to do homework with them and go for a walk and invite them into the kitchen to help cook meals and stuff like that, you would get so much more nurturing if at least one parent was home, or if the work day was a shorter work day that matched the child's school day.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
You're getting warmer. Anyway, okay.
Euthanasia. Everybody has a right to live only so long. The old are no longer useful. They become a burden. You should be ready to accept death. Most people are. An arbitrary age limit could be established. After all, you have a right to only so many steak dinners, so many orgasms, and so many good pleasures in life. And after you've had enough of them, and you're no longer productive in working and contributing, then you should be ready to step aside for the next generation.
So many orgasms.
Who's counting?
You're at 10. That's your limit for your life. You're done.
Mhm.
Time to sign up for maids. Thank you very much.
10. Wow.
But
you
it's-
are chintzy.
Well, it's amazing
Yeah.
that their plans included right down to how much sex people should be having or no longer
And
having.
steak. And I'm in trouble because I have an orgasm with a really good steak. So that's a problem. It's problematic. But
You met your quota years
Yeah.
ago.
but here he's talking, what he's talking about is euthanasia. And this was not even on the radar back then. It was laughable, and he's going to get more into it. But him saying that in the 60s is unheard of. Like, it was just fantasy. They wouldn't even believe that this would ever happen at that point. Right. So, and he's talking about when you're old,
You're useless.
You're
no good
useless.
to anybody.
Yeah,
He kind
remember
of
that.
forgets that grandparents, the extended family, help raise children and help instill values and morals. And not only that, instill history, stories with
Mhm.
those children. So they're not useless. They're actually very useful.
Exactly.
Some things that would help people realize that they had lived long enough. He mentioned several of these. I don't remember them all.
It's
Here
hard
are
to hear.
a few. The use of very pale printing ink on forms that people necessary to fill out, so that older people wouldn't be able to read the pale ink as easily and would need to go to younger people for help.
Now, I don't know if that came across well enough or if that was
No.
clear enough. What he's saying is some of the things they'll do to make people feel older is on forms that they have to fill out, they'll use pale ink. And so they'll start toning down the ink so it's harder for them to see, and then they have to get help.
And
So
smaller print.
right. And they have to start thinking they're a burden because they have to start asking the younger people for help, right?
Automobile traffic patterns. There would be more high-speed traffic lanes, traffic patterns that older people with their slower reflexes would have trouble dealing with, and thus tend to lose some of their independence.
So they're changing traffic patterns so older people can't keep up. So they're doing things to make people feel older than they are, and yes, less useful than they are, to push them towards saying, well, maybe this is the time. And now look what's happening.
Right. Well, I tell you what, all of the roundabouts that all of a sudden are becoming popular with all the city councils to put in, I don't understand those. But it makes sense when this gentleman's saying it's a way to make older people feel useless. And because their reflexes aren't as quick as they used to be, you go in those roundabouts, it's hard to maneuver. They make them so small. They're not built properly or formed properly. It is hard to maneuver. And come wintertime, even more difficult to maneuver within those. And if you've got a bigger vehicle, most older people used to drive the big Cadillacs or the old Chevelles, like the bigger cars. Try and maneuver one of those in a roundabout in the wintertime.
but
Near impossible.
It doesn't really matter in those things. People bounce off you like crazy. It doesn't matter. It's funny. Why does he sound like Joe Biden? That's why we keep pausing, because he keeps wandering off.
Big item which was elaborated at some length was the cost of medical care would be made burdensomely high. Medical care would be connected very closely with one's work, but also would be made very, very high in cost, so that it would simply be unavailable to people beyond a certain time. And unless they had a remarkably rich supporting family, they would just have to do without care. And the idea was that if everybody sees enough what a burden it is on the young to try to maintain the old people, then the young would become agreeable to helping mom and dad along the way, provided that this was done humanely and with dignity. And then the example was there could be like a nice farewell party, a real celebration. Mom and Dad had done a good job. And then after the party's over, I'd take the demise pill.
So did you hear him laughing when he said that? Because he's like, that won't even happen. In his head, he's like, that's ridiculous. And he was saying that in the 80s. Kevorkian didn't come around till the early 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and that was the first case of really kind of being in the public spotlight. So he's laughing because it was like, who's going to help mom and dad kill themselves?
And nowadays, those are the conversations. Oh, you can't afford to live in your own home? You know what? They've got something now called maids, and we will inherit your money now, and then you won't be a burden on us either later. So why don't we just do it now? Why don't we just do you ache and you pain everywhere. You've got arthritis, your eyes are going, your hearing is going. You know what? Let's just do it. And people are doing it, and they are setting their date. I'm going to set my date to December 29th. So December 28th, we're going to have a big giant party, and people are having parties. He is right. I read an article, was it a month or two ago, where a lady put out on Facebook that her friend, who was only 68, or she was young, in her 60s anyway, decided that she was going to go out on her own accord. And they threw a great big party. And then when the party was over, a couple of her closest friends and her children went into the back room, and they did the deed. And it was beautiful, because they all got to say
That's the thing.
goodbye.
Yeah, you've got people convinced. Not only have you convinced them that it's not wrong, but it's also like compassionate, and they have no idea that all it is a government. It's part of the population agenda, but it's also a government budget saving thing. There's no compassion about it, but they've got people duped into thinking it's the right thing to do. It's ridiculous. And don't forget, you can say, well, these people are suffering, so have you no compassion? Because end of life, they're suffering. They should be able to choose when to go out. Don't forget, they're sitting on cures for cancer. They're sitting on cures for aging. They're sitting on cures for pain. They're sitting on the cures for everything. So that doesn't even have to be that way. So they withhold those things, and then they off them, and we think that we're doing a compassionate thing for them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Move on.
The next topic is medicine. There would be profound changes in the practice of medicine. Overall, medicine would be much more tightly controlled. The observation was made, Congress is not going to go along with national health insurance that in 1969 he said is now abundantly evident, but it's not necessary. We have other ways to control health care. These will come about more gradually, but all health care delivery would come under tight control. Medical care would be closely connected to work. If you don't work or can't work, you won't have access to medical care. The days of hospitals giving away free care would gradually wind down until that was virtually non-existent. Costs would be forced up so that people won't be able to afford to go without insurance. People pay. You pay for it, you're entitled to it. It was only subsequently that I began to realize the extent to which you would not be paying for it. Your medical care would be paid for by others, and therefore you would gratefully accept on bended knee what was offered to you as a privilege. Your role, being responsible for your own care, would be diminished.
So he's talking from the States. That doesn't really happen there. They pay for their own stuff largely, and they do their own insurance. But look at here in Canada. We just extended into dental. We just extended, like it's just for older people, I think, too, right?
No, dental was for children 12 and under.
Okay.
Yeah.
So look, they're pulling you in more and more. So now you're on the hook. And what happens if they cut you out of the system and you're on the hook for your own medical? Nobody can pay for that.
Exactly.
At this point, they've increased the prices so high that nobody can deal with that. And it never used to be that way. It used to be doctors coming to your house and helping you and fixing you and, charging a nominal fee for that. And
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm with the Real Estate Association, and the Ontario Real Estate Association just brought in mandatory health insurance in order to keep your real estate license. We don't get a choice. And you know how they're billing it? Well, there are some people in the real estate industry that can't afford health insurance. So the rest of you that can need to pay for those people. So all of your dues are going up $600. Sorry, mandatory. You don't get a choice. And for a lot of people who are already on insurance plans of their spouses or whatever, this actually kicks them off of their spouse's plans and puts them in a worse condition in order to pay for somebody else.
Wow.
The real estate, the realtors that I know anyway, are livid.
For the realtors that
about
can't
this.
afford to pay for it. So they're basically not doing a good job. So you have to pay for it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
As an aside, the way this works, everybody's made dependent on insurance. And if you don't have insurance and you pay directly, the cost of your care is enormous. The insurance company, however, paying for your care does not pay that same amount. If you are charged, say, $600 for the use of an operating room, the insurance company does not pay $600 on your part. They pay $300 or $400. And that differential in billing has the desired effect. It enables the insurance company to pay for that which you could never pay for. They get a discount that's unavailable to you. When you see your bill, you're grateful that the insurance company can do that, and in this way you are dependent and virtually required to have insurance. The whole billing is fraudulent.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that insurance companies got a better price.
I knew that. I've known that for a few years. Yeah. There was a big, actually, I might even have been 60 Minutes or Fifth Estate that brought that to light.
Oh, yeah?
Many years ago. Yeah.
No clue. Anyway, makes sense.
Access to hospitals would be tightly controlled. Identification will be needed to get into the building. Security in and around hospitals would be established and gradually increased so that nobody without identification could get in or move around inside the building. Theft of hospital equipment, things like typewriters and microscopes and so forth, would be allowed, and exaggerated reports of it would be exaggerated, so that this would be the excuse needed to establish the need for strict security until people got used to it. And anybody moving about in a hospital would be required to wear an identification badge with a photograph and telling why he was there, employee or lab technician or visitor or whatever. And this is to be brought in gradually, getting everybody used to the idea of identifying themselves until it was just accepted. This need for ID to move about would start in small ways, hospitals, some businesses, but gradually expand to include everybody in all places.
So it's less, like, you don't even think about it now, but think about what he's saying. There was a time when people could walk in and out of hospitals and nobody would question anything. You had the freedom to go where you wanted, when you wanted, without having to be hassled, because they knew asking for ID was a constitutional violation. People just knew that, so they didn't ask.
Well, not only that, people trusted that if you were in the hospital,
Yeah.
you're probably there either to be seen
Mhm.
or to see a loved one. And both reasons for being there are totally acceptable. You're not there for nefarious purposes. And most people that go into hospitals are not there for nefarious purposes. So
Right.
he's right. Why do we need all these checks and balances and all these security doors and all these badges? And no, you don't have the authority to go here or there. It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be in a hospital.
No, but I'm just thinking back to when my mom was on her deathbed, and I had to wait for them to verify that my mom was on her deathbed so we could go in, because I did not have a Vax pass, right? And it's same thing every freaking night. And these guys, they see me day in, day out, and they come in and they're like, vaccine passport. I say I do not participate in that program, and then they're like, oh, wait here, and then I tell them where I'm going, and then I have to wait for them to verify
And give you permission to
Yeah.
see your mother.
my dying mother. Yeah, I had to ask permission to go up and see my dying mother. So don't tell me that this isn't going to get out of hand one day. I've already seen it.
It was observed that hospitals can be used to confine people for the treatment of criminals. This did not mean necessarily medical treatment. At that time, I did not know the word psycho prison, as in the Soviet Union, but without trying to recall all the details, basically he was describing the use of hospitals both for treating the sick and for confinement of criminals for reasons other than the medical well-being of the criminal. Definition of criminal was not given.
We have seen a few cases now. I mean, this happens all the time. Happened in Nazi Germany. Throw it in hospitals that call them like crazy. Russia does that all the time. The greatest minds, you put them in jail because they're crazy. We've actually seen a couple of cases here in Canada.
Here in Canada, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, during the COVID stuff, a couple of really well-known cases. So it's not like it doesn't happen here. We've known.
Speak too much
3
truth.
people.
Be a whistleblower and see how fast your ass is thrown into jail
Right.
or into hospital for psychiatric treatment.
Yeah, it's so much as like, I don't think these vaccines are safe and effective. Okay, crazy. Time to go. And you're the only sane person in the room. It's like Twilight Zone.
The image of the doctor would change. No longer would he be seen as an individual professional in service to individual patients. But the doctor would be gradually recognized as a highly skilled technician, and his job would change. The job is to include things like executions by lethal injection. The image of the doctor as being a powerful, independent person would have to be changed. And he went on to say, doctors make entirely too much money. They should advertise like any other product. Lawyers would be advertising too. The solo practitioner would become a thing of the past. A few diehards might try to hold out, but most doctors would be employed by an institution of one kind or another. Group practice would be encouraged, corporations would be encouraged, and then once the corporate image of medical care, as this gradually became more and more acceptable, doctors would more and more become employees rather than independent contractors. And along with that, of course, unstated but necessary, is the employee serves his employer, not his patient.
And that has happened.
It has. In fact, there was a petition circulating so that doctors did not have to perform euthanasia on people if they chose not to, or because it didn't align with their beliefs. And the doctors lost. They were fighting and petitioning, and they lost.
Right. And it's funny because it makes you start speculating. And they say the whole idea is to destroy the image of the doctors. What if one of the byproducts that they wanted from COVID was to take away their reputation, which they did?
They did.
Right?
Yes, they did.
Doctors, lawyers, police, judges, they all lost their reputations in the last 3 years.
That's right.
We don't trust any of them anymore. Military.
No, anyone that was reputable had their license pulled by the regulators, and those who were still working, they towed the line and went with the narrative instead of the individual care of their clients.
Right. Nobody trusts them anymore. The people who've woken up, the ones who've been, woke up late and took the jabs, they don't trust doctors anymore.
Exactly.
So I wonder if that was a byproduct of their agenda.
100% it was another way to.
100% it was.
100%.
Not 98%. 100%. 180%.
They needed to destroy the medical community and the trust we had in them.
I think so, because then what you replace it with? Well, it's just the WHO that knows what to do.
But it's the same with the police too.
I just rhymed. You can't steal that soundbite. World Health Organization.
But they did that with the police too. Destroyed the trust and faith that we put in the police.
Yeah, look what happened. I mean, we defended them. Black Lives Matter came out and they were defund the police, and we all defended them like no. And then next thing you know, they're attacking you, or they're attacking old people for honking. Yeah. For donk.
A few diehard doctors may try to make a go of it, remaining in solo practice, remaining independent, which parenthetically is me, but they would suffer great loss of income. They'd be able to scrape by maybe, but never really live comfortably as those who were willing to become employees of the system. Ultimately, there would be no room at all for the solo practitioner after the system is entrenched.
Nothing really.
Next heading to talk about is health and disease. He said there would be new diseases to appear, which had not ever been seen before, would be very difficult to diagnose and be untreatable, at least for a long time. No elaboration was made on this, but I remember not long after hearing this presentation, when I had a puzzling diagnosis to make, I would be wondering, is this what he was talking about? Is this a case of what he was talking about? Some years later, as AIDS ultimately developed, I think AIDS was at least one example of what he was talking about. I now think that AIDS probably is a manufactured disease.
And we now are
We
pretty
now
sure he's
know.
right.
We
Yes.
now know enough people have come forward, Judy Mikovits being one who worked
Yeah.
on that project and said it was manufactured.
Yep, 100%. So there he is thinking about it. That's in the 80s. He's saying now it's coming through in the 80s, and now he's thinking this might be the thing.
Cancer. He said we can cure almost every cancer right now. Information is on file in the Rockefeller Institute if it's ever decided that it should be released. But consider, if people stopped dying of cancer, how rapidly we would become overpopulated. You may as well die of cancer as something else. Efforts at cancer treatment would be geared more toward comfort than toward cure. There was some statement that ultimately the cancer cures which were being hidden in the Rockefeller Institute would come to light because independent researchers might bring them out despite these efforts to suppress them. But at least for the time being, letting people die of cancer was a good thing to do because it would slow down the problem of overpopulation.
Now, notice he said it moves from cure to comfort.
Yes.
That has been the case with everything pharmaceutical. Nothing is cure. Everything is deal with symptoms, like reduce symptoms. That's it.
Make you comfortable, make it so
So-
it doesn't hurt. You still suffer inside, but you don't hurt.
See, and that is the one thing that I just can't get past. Why do people put so much trust in an industry that hasn't cured anything since 1912? I'm talking about penicillin. They haven't cured a damn thing. All they've done is deal with symptoms, and people still trust them.
Yep.
I don't get that. It's just, to me, that is the number one fall down on anybody's logic right there.
Yep.
Another very interesting thing was heart attacks. He said, there is now a way to simulate a real heart attack. It can be used as a means of assassination. Only a very skilled pathologist who knew exactly what to look for at an autopsy could distinguish this from the real thing.
I don't know what to add there. I mean, we're seeing that on a large scale as well.
Yep.
Only good doctors like Dr. Hoff, who knows to look for D-dimers before they vaccinate their people. Smart doctors, use your brains.
He then went on to talk about nutrition and exercise, sort of in the same framework. People would have to eat right and exercise right to live as long as before. Most won't. This in the connection of nutrition. There was no specific statement that I can recall as to particular nutrients that would be either inadequate or in excess. In retrospect, I tend to think he meant high salt diets and high fat diets would predispose toward high blood pressure and premature arteriosclerotic heart disease, and that if people were too dumb or too lazy to exercise as they should, then their circulating fats would go up and predispose to disease. And he said something about diet information about proper diet would be widely available, but most people, particularly stupid people who had no right to continue living anyway, they would ignore the advice and just go on and eat what was convenient and tasted good.
Yeah, if you didn't see the show last week, he was talking about the idea that the global predators or people at the top, they want to force evolution. So they want to increase evolution. They want to increase the level of humanity. So they are basically creating this selective process where if you choose to rise to the challenge, then you can go forward. But if you're too dumb and too lazy, then they're going to cull you out. So this is them basically grand eugenics is what they're doing here.
But it's done by your choice. Here's the information. Here's what you know you need to do. But if you choose to go this route, another route we've offered you of fatty diets, salty foods, and no exercise, then we didn't need you in our evolution train anyway.
Right. And that's the narcissistic's way out of it's the heroic avenue for them. We gave them the chance. They didn't take it. It's on them. Right.
We didn't force them to eat those French fries and cheeseburgers and sit in their lazy boy chair watching our movies and playing our video games. They chose to do that themselves.
Right. Absolves them from villainy is what that does.
Yeah.
There were some other unpleasant things said about food. I just can't recall what they were, but I do remember of having reflections about wanting to plant a garden in the backyard to get around whatever these contaminated foods would be. I regret I don't remember the details, the rest of this about nutrition and hazardous nutrition.
Chemtrails.
Yeah, well, they're getting you in the backyard too. Yeah.
Yep.
Tower gardens.
Appeal.
That's right.
GMO
Yeah.
foods.
Head on over to TFM Report, partners, and look up those tower gardens.
Tower gardens.
Well, in connection with nutrition, he also mentioned that public eating places would rapidly increase. That this had a connection with the family, too. As more and more people ate out, eating at home would become less important. People would be less dependent on their kitchens at home. And then this also connected to convenience foods being made widely available. Things like you could pop into the microwave. Whole meals would be available prefixed. And, of course, we've now seen this in some pretty good ones. But this whole different approach to eating out and to previously prepared meals being eaten in the home was predicted at the time to be brought about convenience foods. And the convenience foods, though, would be part of the hazard. Anybody who was lazy enough to want the convenience foods rather than fixing his own also better be energetic enough to exercise, because if he was too lazy to exercise and too lazy to fix his own food, then he didn't deserve to live very long. This was all presented as sort of a moral judgment about people and what they should do with their energies. People who are smart, who would learn about nutrition, and who are disciplined enough to eat right and exercise right are better people and are the kind you want to live longer.
Yeah, well, this is where they start rigging the game too, because if you start eating McDonald's, you get more tired and more lethargic. So it's a catch-22, because you eat that stuff and you won't want to exercise because you get more and more tired.
Yeah. But like how we finished it off at the end, those are the people that you don't want in society anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Evolution.
And again, that's not him talking. He's disgusted by all this stuff, but he's paraphrasing.
Somewhere along in here, there was also something about accelerating the onset of puberty, and this was said in connection with health, and later in connection with education, and connected to accelerating the process of evolutionary change. There was a statement that we think we can push evolution faster and in the direction we want it to go.
But it's weird because it's taken a different turn. Now they're doing puberty blockers and they're wrecking genders.
But they did start on the path of puberty happening sooner by putting hormones or injecting hormones into our animals to make them plumper and fatter and bigger, and to make, egg production, more eggs or increased egg production, and the different stuff that they were putting in our fruits and vegetables. They're adding all these chemicals. And what started happening, instead of girls having their periods at 14, 15, 16, they started having their periods at 9, 10, 11. So they really were bringing on puberty much, much faster, right? And look at boys, what was happening with boys. They were injecting more female hormones into stuff, and as boys are ingesting milk and steak and stuff like that,
soy especially,
exactly, it started messing with
testosterone, and we get less manly men. So that has happened as well.
Another area of discussion was religion. This is an avowed atheist speaking, and he said, religion is not necessarily bad. A lot of people seem to need religion with its mysteries and rituals, so they will have religion. But the major religions of today have to be changed because they are not compatible with the changes to come. The old religions will have to go, especially Christianity. Once the Roman Catholic Church is brought down, the rest of Christianity will follow easily. Then a new religion can be accepted for use all over the world. It will incorporate something from all of the old ones to make it more easy for people to accept it and feel at home in it. Most people won't be too concerned with religion. They will realize that they don't need it. In order to do this, the Bible will be changed. It will be rewritten to fit the new religion.
So they're going to mess with the Bible. We're going to play one more clip after this.
Well, Yuval Harari, right?
Right. We've been studying the Bible and we've been looking at different versions, going back and forth. There's scriptures missing, there's scriptures changed. We go through the same version, King James, from many different years. It changes, different translations, they change, and they're toning it down. They're making it less and less miraculous, less and less filled with faith. There are complete scriptures just missing now. So they are messing with the Bible, but he's talking more specifically. I think actually that's the end of this one, really. He's talking more specifically that once they destroy religion, they can come up with their own religion. Now, if you watched our show many, many months ago, we did the Albert Pike letter, who talked about in the final war, he wants to pit Muslims against Christians. And then when people are fed up with religion, then they can issue their own religion based on a human,
an AI written Bible that will fit perfectly for everybody.
Right. Now, if you think that's far-fetched, here's Noah Yuval Harari, who's Klaus Schwab's right-hand guy and probably the modern-day Mengele. He's eugenics, and he just wants to mess with the human body because he doesn't believe that we're anything more than an experiment and we're hackable. And here's him talking about the Bible.
GPT and all these wonders, they are the amoebas of the AI world. What would T-Rex look like? It's the first technology ever that can create new ideas. Gutenberg printed the Bible in the middle of the 15th century. The printing press printed as many copies of the Bible as Gutenberg instructed it, but it did not create a single new page. It had no ideas of its own about the Bible. Is it good? Is it bad? How to interpret this? How to interpret that? AI can create new ideas, can even write a new Bible. Throughout history, religions dreamt about having a book written by a superhuman intelligence. In a few years, there might be religions that are actually correct. That just think about a religion whose holy book is written by an AI. That could be a reality in a few years.
And that's the religion that will be correct.
Albert Pike wrote about it in the 1800s. This man talked about it in the 80s, listening to the 60s. They've been predicting it forever. And here's Noah Yuval Harari talking about maybe we can write a Bible that is correct, because all of the other religions so far have not been correct. I mean, the arrogance and the narcissism is just off the hook. And nice try, Louise. I'm still not putting that up. So there you go. So, our point here is, we really should be doing breaking news and clickbait and all that stuff if we were smart, if we had any business sense, but we don't. Our point here is to make you smarter so you can see this stuff and you can come up with solutions to fight back. So hopefully, if you want, by the way, to go and just listen to that whole thing on your own, you don't want to wait for the rest of that to come out, where can you go? You can go to Brighteon. I've put the whole thing up on Brighteon. We'll link to it over on our website at one point, but you can go to our site on Brighteon, and the whole thing is there, and you can listen to all 4 hours, and it's really informative. So you can head over there, and
because it's going to take us a while to get through it on the show for everybody else. And we want to take a little bit of time off over the Christmas holidays. So if you are missing us, that's something you can do on Monday nights and Thursday nights over the Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
Or go and share out all our shows to everybody you know.
Or rewatch some of the shows that you've forgotten about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll go back and you go, holy cow, they called it like a year ago. And like, told you. Yeah. So, we'll be back on Thursday. That show that we've been foreshadowing and
almost
hinting.
Afraid to say it, that something else will happen and
right.
shut it down.
Yeah, we're gonna stick it to the man next week. Or on Thursday, and then that'll be the last show for the holidays.
Be the last show for the holidays.
Yeah, and then we won't see you again till the new year.
So Louise just asked, where can we find that again?
You can find that over on our Brighteon channel. If I get on the ball, then I can put it over on our website and link over to it. So that's brighteon.com. Go to channels, TFM Report. I think if you just search TFM Report, you'll find us. You can also go to our site at TFM Report. I'm trying to talk and
there in a
and
second
find
from
it at the
bottom.
same time. You can go to resources, and there's two big buttons there. There's some links you can go to, but there's two big buttons. One is Jody's Know Your Rights package, which is super downloadable and everybody wants it. We haven't sorted it, so it's like 787 pages, and you can just download the whole freaking thing, and you've got everything you know about knowing your rights and fighting for your rights when it counts. And then on the other side, you've got Chris's research packages, and I've got everything from the scandemic to secret societies to there's a lot of ancient and old documents there that we just figure you have to go back at least pre 1980s to start getting proper information again. So this is all forgotten knowledge that we're starting to put up, and it's an ever-growing library.
The preppers package is up there too? Not yet?
No, I haven't done that yet, but I will do that as soon as I can. I won't put that in behind one of the buttons. I will put that right on the resources page because I think preppers has its own deserves its own area.
Place.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's it. That was a big show.
That was a big show. Thanks for joining us yet again, sharing your Monday night with us. We will be back
first week in January.
Yeah, we'll be back the first week of January. So next week there will be no shows. So Thursday will be our last show before the Christmas holidays. And we will probably be back. So we'll miss all of next week, and we'll miss the following Monday. So we're definitely gone for 3 shows. I believe we will be back on January 4th.
Yep, that puts us on January 4th.
January 4th.
Yeah.
So it'll be Thursday. So 3 shows, and then we're back.
Yes. So as always, thank you for watching. And I guess we will see you Thursday with our big show. And then after that, we will see you in the new year. So we'll save our Christmas greetings till the next show. Okay. Bye everybody. Thank you for watching.
Freedom.